Good morning. Just hours after President Trump ordered U.S. airstrikes targeting Iran's nuclear facilities, Iran retaliated with a large-scale ballistic missile attack on Israel. According to first responders, up to 10 locations were hit, and more than 80 people were injured. Numerous residential buildings were destroyed. This is footage and images of the horrific aftermath of Iran's retaliation against Israel, following the U.S. bombing that demolished their nuclear facilities. It was a night where air raid sirens blared relentlessly, unable to drown out the screams of those who had just lost loved ones. Immediately after President Donald Trump ordered strikes on Iran's key nuclear facilities, including the heavily fortified underground Fordow base, Iran responded with a barrage of devastating missiles aimed directly at Israel's civilian areas, not military bases. Within hours of the U.S. attack, nearly 30 missiles from Iran were launched simultaneously at Israel's civilian centers. Reports from Tel Aviv and Haifa indicate that two major cities were hit, with at least 80 people seriously injured, numerous buildings collapsed, and Israel's citizens endured a night of hell. A survivor recounted, "I was putting my daughter to bed when our apartment shook like an earthquake. I thought I was in a nightmare until I saw blood in the hallway and my neighbor trapped under rubble." A national state of emergency was declared. Missile warning systems operated continuously, but many residential areas couldn't react in time as the missiles fell too quickly, too relentlessly. Videos from the scene show people running in panic, screaming, some fleeing with nothing but their lives. Israel's health ministry confirmed that most of the injured were civilians, including women and children. No words can justify firing missiles at civilians. Regardless of the reason, retaliation or self-defense, using weapons of mass destruction on residential areas is a grave violation of human rights and must be condemned unequivocally. The world has witnessed too much bloodshed in wars waged in the name of security and self-defense. But in the end, it's not the leaders who give the orders who suffer, it's the mothers who lose their children, the children who lose their fathers, and the infants who never get to grow up. It all began hours earlier when Tel Aviv burned as Israel's citizens slept. President Donald Trump had unexpectedly ordered strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities, a decision made without prior announcement, without United Nations approval, without any international consensus. According to Fox News, the attack targeted Fordow, a secretive uranium enrichment facility buried deep underground, considered the heart of Iran's nuclear program. The airstrikes used bunker-busting bombs, known as the mother of all bombs. In a speech the next morning, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu hailed the action as a historic turning point and a golden opportunity to dismantle Iran's nuclear program. But the issue isn't who applauded, it's the consequences. Just hours after bombs rained on Iran, Tehran responded with a statement that the U.S. had destroyed any chance for negotiation. "We have nothing left to lose." A cold, unembellished declaration that shattered hopes of avoiding a firestorm in the region. And the firestorm arrived, not in Iran, but in Israel, where civilians once again became pawns in a bloody political game. It's undeniable that Iran has repeatedly violated nuclear agreements. But was the U.S.'s unilateral bombing, without dialogue, a wise move, or did it turn a potential threat into a real catastrophe? Iran's foreign minister stated sharply, "Last week, we were negotiating with the U.S. This week, they chose bombs over words." Who can trust dialogue now? This question isn't just for America but for the world. When diplomacy is choked by force, all that remains is war, blood, and children crying amid the rubble. As the debris of the Fordow nuclear facility still smoldered, Iran launched nearly 30 ballistic missiles targeting civilian centers in Tel Aviv and Haifa. According to Fars News, no military bases were targeted. No battles unfolded between opposing armies. Instead, the targets were crowded residential areas where people slept, children played, and the elderly rested. They didn't aim at soldiers, they aimed at people. Trin, a war correspondent for Fars News, reported emotionally from Tel Aviv, over 10 strike points were recorded, with many apartment buildings leveled. Survivors said they heard no sound before walls exploded. Flames erupted from basements, glass shattered everywhere. Mothers clutched their children, fleeing the wreckage in panic. I thought I was going to die. I couldn't hear anything except my daughter crying, "Mommy," said a surviving mother, her leg pinned under rubble, in agony. Iran's government didn't hide its actions. In an official statement, Iran's foreign ministry called the attack a justified response to the US and Israel's sabotage of regional peace. They said Israel had fired the first shot at diplomacy, so it shouldn't be surprised to face retaliation. But who bore the brunt? The mothers who lost children, the infants buried under debris, the Israeli people, not the political leaders. Attacking civilians with missiles is a blatant violation of international humanitarian law. No nation, no cause, whether war or retaliation, can justify targeting non-military sites. This isn't a war between states, it's a crime against humanity. Israel declared a nationwide state of emergency, but the deeper wound can't be healed by sirens or soldiers. It's in the trust lost, the fear creeping into every home. After enduring Iran's missile barrage, Israel is no longer a nation living but a nation defending. Every street, every corner bears the gray ash of rubble and an eerie silence replacing the usual laughter and traffic. Israel's government immediately declared a national emergency. All schools, malls, theaters, and playgrounds were closed indefinitely. Citizens were told to stay in shelters as long as possible and avoid gatherings. A security official told Fars News, "We don't know where, how, or when Iran's next strike will come, but we're certain it will." The domino effect of the retaliation spread across the region. Lebanon, Syria, Gaza, Egypt, and Jordan raised military alerts at varying levels. Experts fear Iran's proxy forces, like Hezbollah in Lebanon, Shia militias in Iraq, and Houthis in Yemen, could join the fight at any moment. Fars News emphasized that Israel's greatest fear isn't Iran's missiles but a multi-front attack from different groups simultaneously. Arab nations like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Qatar called for peace but stopped short of directly condemning Iran or the US. The United Nations issued a vague warning, "War is not the answer." Meanwhile, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation formed a contact group to support de-escalation and prevent aggression against Iran. Calls for peace seem too late when blood has been spilled and hatred boils on both sides. While politicians strategize, Israel's citizens remain in shelters, unsure if they'll see tomorrow's sunrise. And it's not just them, the entire Middle East is a powder keg, awaiting one more spark to explode. In Washington, U.S. national security advisors are meeting urgently. In Tel Aviv, Israel's defense ministry hasn't left its command bunker since the first night of strikes. Everyone knows this isn't the end, it's the beginning. Fox News reports that both Israel and the U.S. are on maximum defense, fearing Iran's next move could be far larger, possibly targeting U.S. military bases or forces in the Middle East. The International Atomic Energy Agency admitted it couldn't assess the true damage at Fordow due to destroyed tunnels or Iran's refusal to grant access. An international expert noted it's hard to know if the U.S. struck the heart of Iran's nuclear program or merely its outer shell, and if it's not fully destroyed, the threat remains. Israel believes the strike changed the Middle East's dynamics, but they admit Iran retains its proxy forces across the region, from Hezbollah in Lebanon, Houthis in Yemen, to armed groups in Iraq and Syria. President Trump, ordering the attack, insisted the U.S. wasn't seeking war and that Iran knew what it needed for peace. Yet, the U.S. foreign minister said no further military campaigns were planned. The question arises, if war wasn't the goal, why strike first? This contradiction has made Iran's response more unpredictable than ever. No one knows where Iran's next strike will land, a U.S. military base, an aircraft carrier, or a widespread cyber attack on America's financial system. Fox News analysis notes that the U.S. has over 40,000 troops and their families stationed across the Middle East, from Bahrain, Qatar, and Iraq to Jordan and the UAE. If Iran or its proxies target these, America's retaliation would be hard to restrain. Joy Jones, a former U.S. Marine bomb disposal expert, said, "They may not seek American blood, but if it happens, it'll cross a red line the world doesn't want." If American blood is spilled, the entire situation could shift from limited retaliation to all-out war, pulling in Israel, Lebanon, Syria, and Gulf states like Saudi Arabia and the UAE into the vortex. While Tel Aviv and Haifa's residents sift through rubble for belongings, bodies, or remnants of their homes, military vehicles in Tehran move toward the border. In Washington, the Pentagon stays lit all night. At the United Nations, urgent meetings continue, but no ceasefire is signed. The UN Secretary-General, in distress, said, "We're approaching an abyss humanity should never near." Is this the start of all-out war? The US struck, Iran retaliated, Israel crumbled in parts, and Iran's proxies haven't yet acted. For over 20 years, the Middle East has sat on a volcano's edge. But never has it erupted as violently as today. Blood has been spilled, missiles have fallen, children are buried under rubble. Justice doesn't belong to the strong but to those who don't kill civilians. No side is right if it chooses to slaughter the innocent to prove strength. No government can claim to protect peace when it starts with bombs and ends with bodies. Peace doesn't come from weapons. It comes when those in power learn to respect others' lives. The final question we must ask: if the next strike comes from Hezbollah, Hamas, Iraq, or Yemen, can the US and Israel withstand them all, or are they being pulled into a bottomless quagmire with no escape, where every step costs another life? We can debate politics, diplomacy, or nuclear deals, but no one can dispute a child's right to live. When bombs fall on schools, hospitals, and homes, victory loses meaning, only pain, guilt, and a world that's lost itself remain. Thank you for joining us on James of Stoic Wisdom. Share your thoughts below and subscribe for more in-depth analysis. Welcome back to James of Stoic Wisdom. The devastating missile strikes on Israel's civilian areas, following America's attack on Iran's nuclear facilities, mark a grim turning point in the Middle East. This segment delves into the geopolitical fallout, the role of leaked information, and the sobering lessons for a world caught in escalating tensions, offering reflections for those seeking clarity amid chaos. Analysis of the leak. The precise targeting of civilian areas in Tel Aviv and Haifa, as reported by Fars News, suggests Iran's retaliation was not spontaneous but meticulously planned. A leaked statement from Iran's foreign ministry, calling the strikes a justified response, was likely a deliberate signal to the international community. This leak, possibly orchestrated through Iran's regional allies, aimed to frame the attack as a direct consequence of U.S. aggression, shifting blame from Iran's civilian targeting to America's initial strike. The leak also revealed Iran's strategic restraint in avoiding military targets, a move designed to maximize diplomatic impact while minimizing the risk of a full-scale NATO response. This calculated disclosure exposed weaknesses in U.S. and Israeli intelligence, as neither anticipated the scale or civilian focus of Iran's counterstrike. The absence of prior warnings, unlike Iran's previous attacks, suggests a shift toward unpredictability, amplified by the leaked narrative that Iran had nothing left to lose. This rhetoric, combined with the lack of immediate UN condemnation, underscores how leaks can shape global perceptions, casting Iran as a defiant victim rather than an aggressor. Geopolitical context. The attack and its aftermath signal a fracturing of the unipolar world order. Iran's ability to strike Israel directly, without immediate U.S. or allied intervention, highlights the growing influence of anti-Western coalitions, including Iran's ties with Russia and China. The silence from Arab states like Saudi Arabia and Qatar, despite their U.S. alliances, reflects a regional reluctance to escalate, fearing Iran's proxy network, Hezbollah, Houthis, and Shia militias. This network, untouched by the U.S. strike on Fordow, remains a latent threat, capable of multi-front assaults. The UN's vague calls for peace and the OIC's support for de-escalation reveal a global hesitation to confront Iran directly, possibly due to economic ties, e.g., China's oil imports, or fear of broader conflict. The US's 40,000 troops in the region now face heightened risks, as Iran's proxies could target bases in Bahrain or Qatar, forcing America into a defensive posture across multiple theaters. This crisis also exposes the limits of U.S. unilateralism, striking without UN approval alienated potential allies, leaving Israel to bear the brunt of retaliation. The Middle East is no longer just a regional hotspot but a stage for global power realignment, where Iran leverages chaos to assert its resilience. Reflective perspective, for our audience, aged 40 to 70, who value sober analysis, this crisis invites us to reflect on the Stoic principle of focusing on what we can control. We cannot stop missiles or rewrite foreign policy, but we can question the narratives we're fed. Why did the U.S. bypass diplomacy for bombs? Why did Iran choose civilians as targets? These questions push us to seek truth beyond propaganda. The suffering in Tel Aviv and Haifa, mothers clutching children, homes reduced to rubble, reminds us that war's cost is borne by the innocent, not the powerful. As Stoics, we must cultivate resilience, not through apathy, but by demanding accountability from leaders who ignite conflicts. What can we do? Stay informed, challenge official accounts, and advocate for dialogue over destruction. The Middle East's pain mirrors our own struggles with trust and loss. Let's ask, how can we, as global citizens, foster a world where peace isn't a pause between wars but a commitment to humanity? Share your thoughts. Is diplomacy dead in the Middle East, or can it be revived? What lessons can we draw from this cycle of violence? Subscribe to James of Stoic Wisdom for more reflections on our world's challenges.